Toastmasters, a reputable organization known for its value for leadership development, held its 2015 Nigerian Conference at the Eko Hotels and Suites, Lagos. Notable Toastmaster Mr Kyari Bukar, the CEO of the CSCS Nigeria, and Mrs Victoria Ferrar, Regional Advisor for Middleast Africa Toastmasters, shared their perspectives on leadership in Nigeria and leadership engagement.
Leadership is the ability to motivate, inspire, or influence others towards a collective goal. Very simple, succinct. A visionary leader sees clearly what most people hardly imagine or perceive until they articulate it. He sees the end from the beginning. Okay? I think somebody mentioned John Maxwell, which I would also. He said leaders become great not because of their power, but because of the ability to empower. Okay? There is something about it that tells you that it's not a selfish thing. It's indeed selflessness. We know what a bad leader looks like, especially for those of us that live in Nigeria since independence. In Nigeria, leadership has become a means of personal enrichment and selfish ambitions rather than selfless service. I call it selfless ambition. Although since the advent of democracy, election manifestos of many Nigerian leaders look people-oriented. Pick any of the parties. Go through their manifestos. Nigeria's problems were solved on those pieces of papers. However, once they get into power, they prove otherwise. Their endless looting of the treasury has forced many Nigerians into poverty. From an African perspective, leadership is a divine call to a sacred duty, which unfortunately has been desecrated in Nigeria.
So if we're facing challenges in our country today, most likely a lot has to do with leadership. And oftentimes we actually think that the leader is that very special one that drops from heaven so that he can solve the problem of everybody. But I think that's a myth that we need to do away with. A leader is one amongst all, which simply means that it could be any of us. As a matter of fact, the leadership of a community or of an organization or a nation actually is a representation of the average value system that is prevalent in that environment. So if we want better leaders, we have to become better people.
So what is engagement? Engagement is a combination of the changes in the events or your perspective, right? So when you are working in a company and you experience a change in your company or a change in the events, you start thinking, am I going to be highly engaged or I will be a passive person who will not involve myself? The question is, how highly engaged are we in Toastmasters? We need the type of competency where we keep developing our skills, our techniques in leading. Because at the end of the day, no one is the same. Even if we all come from the same country, we all have personal differences. And as a leader, we have the responsibility of making sure that our members, our leaders have the same vision and commitment that you are proposing or that you have as an advocacy. In other words, you keep retooling, you keep improving the skills and competencies that you have.
Highlight of the event was the awards presentation and Gala Night, alongside the Youth Leadership Program launched by the District Director, Mr. Inam Wilson.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Youth Leadership Program for District 94, Nigeria. Mr. Awolabi, please come. So what I'll do is I will formally present this to the Youth Ambassador for Nigeria. Do you have millions there? You're holding on to it very tightly. Would you give it to somebody trustworthy?
Not at all.
Oh, okay. Maybe you can put it. Thank you. So that I can I can formally hand over this to you, then you will open it, and then we'll do a group photograph. Yes, exactly. Okay, so here we go.
They speak further on the role of Toastmasters.
Communication is one of the most fundamental skills a leader needs, and I believe that with what we are doing in Nigeria with Toastmasters, which was started with Eagle Toastmasters. I was amongst the founders of Eagle Toastmasters a little over 10 years ago, and I do believe that we now have possibly hundreds of clubs all over Nigeria, and we want it to grow so that the next set of leaders in Nigeria would be able to communicate clearly their vision and goals and aspirations, and that way we would have a far better nation than we are faced with at the moment.
And we know that we have a gap for leadership skills. I have made the research that one of the gaps that we have is communication skills still. We haven't developed the proper communication skills, and this is why Toastmasters is very helpful to us. We learn how to bridge the gap in communication. As employees, we need to communicate. As people, we need to communicate 24 hours a day. And whatever your communication is, you make sure that you're able to convey the right message. Toastmasters trains us to convey the right message in a very straight to the point type of structure. So this is one thing, that's why I'm an advocate of Toastmasters. I wish that everyone is a Toastmasters because it is needed in every part of life.
From this conference, it will be expected that the scope and sphere of Toastmasters Nigeria will widen in the national space.